Hello everyone, this is Ryan from High Desert Math Tutor, and today I want to talk about converting the phrase 3 7/8 into decimal form, into a fraction, and into a mixed number. So in general, there are 3 different common ways to represent partial numbers. So the most common way we deal with them in our day-to-day lives would be a decimal form. So 1.5 would be something like 1.5. But then when you're getting into working with numbers mathematically on paper, it's often more convenient to work with fractions. And then often when we're talking, we talk in terms of mixed numbers. So today we're going to look at converting this phrase into the 3 different common forms. So to begin, we'll talk about converting 3 7/8 into decimal form. So when we're doing this, we'll have 2 parts to this number. There's a part that's a whole number and a part that is a fractional number. So the whole number, 3, we're just going to represent as 3. Now in math, when you say you have 3 and you have 7/8, you represent this and with addition. And 7/8 is the same as dividing something into 8 pieces and you only have 7 of those pieces. So 3 7/8 could be represented this way, but our goal is to turn this into decimal form. So 3 can be represented as the whole number 3, and if we want to clearly show that we have nothing extra, we can put 0.0, and we can put as many zeros as we want, as long as it's to the right of this decimal. So let's just put 3.000, just for the sake of it. I'll move this over a little bit. Now for the fractional part, 7/8, we turn that into decimal form by actually dividing 7 divided by 8. So I'm going to do that over to the right. So we're going to say 7 divided by 8. So we don't expect to have a whole number answer for this division. Now, the question is, how many times does 8 go into 7? And 8 goes into 7 0 times. So to move forward, we have to add a decimal. Bring that decimal up, then we can add a 0 down below. The new question is, how many times does 8 go into 70? And 8 goes into 70 8 times. 8 times 8 is 64. And if we subtract this, 70 minus 64 is 6. So we still have a remainder, so we want to keep dividing until there's no remainder. So we can add another 0 now. Bring that 0 down. And the question is, how many times does 8 go into 60? And 8 goes into 60 7 times. 7 times 8 is 56. And now 60 minus 56 is 4. So we still have a remainder, so we add another 0, bring that other 0 down, and we ask, how many times does 8 go into 40? And 8 goes into 40 exactly 5 times. So 8 times 5 is 40. We get a remainder of 0. So now we are officially done with dividing. So the answer, we have 3, which we converted into 3.000, plus, now 7/8 is the same as 7 divided by 8. That is 0.875. Now, the final step in this conversion to decimal form is just adding these numbers. And I just want to change the format for a moment just so we can point out some little details about when you're adding numbers with decimals. So if we say 3.000, whenever you're adding numbers with decimals, you have to line up those decimals. So we have 0.875. This just makes it a little bit more clear what numbers we're actually adding together. So starting here, 0 plus 5 is 5, 0 plus 7 is 7, 0 plus 8 is 8, and when you're adding and subtracting numbers with decimals, the decimal stays in the same place. And then 3 plus 0 is 3. So the final answer in decimal form is 3.875. So that is 3 7/8 in decimal form. Next, we have the fraction form that we want to convert it to. Now for fraction form, there are two ways of doing this. Now, the first thing we can do is rewrite what we have above, which is 3 plus 7/8. So if we're going to show all the work, how we do this is we need to turn 3 into a fraction before we can add these fractions. So we can turn 3 into a fraction if we divide it by some number that doesn't change 3. Now the only number we can divide anything by without changing it is 1. So I'm going to rewrite 3 as 3 divided by 1. And everything else stays the same. So we're still going to have plus 7/8. Next, we need to get a common denominator between 1 and 8. So that common denominator is going to be the least common multiple of 1 and 8. So 8, we can't make any smaller. But for 1, we can ask ourselves, what do we need to multiply 1 by to turn it into 8? And we simply need to multiply 1 times 8. So I made another video talking about adding fractions, subtracting fractions, and talking about all the steps that you would go over here. So I'm going to skip over some of the details. But in order to turn 3 divided by 1 into an equivalent fraction with a denominator of 8, we're going to multiply it by 8 over 8. So 8 over 8 times 3 over 1 plus 7/8. I also made another video talking about multiplying fractions, so you can find that in the videos. But we will multiply 8 over 8 times 3 over 1. 8 times 3 is 24. 8 times 1 is 8 plus 7/8. Now that we have a common denominator, if we'd like to, we can actually write 24 plus 7 over that one common denominator. And that's not a bad idea because that reminds us that once we have a common denominator, the denominator does not change. So the final step to this problem is to add 24 plus 7, and we get 31/8. So this is our final answer for 3 7/8 if we turn it into fraction form. And just one thing to point out though, because this may look a little bit odd to some of you, this fraction, the numerator is larger than the denominator. And what that means is the top of the fraction is bigger than the bottom of the fraction. All that means is that this represents some number that's bigger than 1. And indeed, it represents 3 7/8. So it's a number that's a little bit bigger than 3. But whenever you see a fraction where the top is bigger than the bottom, or the numerator is larger than the denominator, that's called an improper fraction. Okay, so the final conversion, this one will be a pretty quick one, is mixed numbers. And mixed numbers are very nice because they follow the way that we speak pretty straightforwardly. So when we say we have 3 7/8, we can write that as 3 7/8. Now, believe it or not, all we have to do to turn this into a mixed number is just get rid of the addition and just put 3 right next to 7/8. So the way we write this is 3 7/8. And that's it. So since that was so easy, the one thing I want to show you now is how to convert from fraction form into mixed number form. So the most common way we do this is we're going to divide that fraction, and we're going to continue to divide until we have to add a decimal. Once we have to add a decimal, we stop dividing. So what this is, we're going to take 31/8 and read it as 31 divided by 8. So we're going to put 31 inside the division bar, 8 on the outside. Now we ask, how many times does 8 go into 3? It goes in 0 times. But we don't need that 0. So how many times does 8 go into 31? 8 goes into 31 3 times. 8 times 3 is 24. Now, 31 minus 24, we have to borrow from this 3, turn it into a 2. We have to add 10 to the 1, so it becomes 11. And 11 minus 4 is 7. So if we were to continue to divide now, we would have to add a decimal. So let's stop. Now, all we have to do to finish converting this fraction into a mixed number is right next to our whole number answer, we're going to put a division bar or a fraction bar. We're dividing by 8, so 8 goes on the bottom. And our remainder is 7, so a 7 goes up top. So 31/8 can also be read as 31 divided by 8, and in a mixed number form, that is 3 7/8. So I hope you found this video useful. If you liked it, please give it a like, subscribe to our channel, and if you find yourself needing help with some sort of math problem, feel free to post the problem down below in the comments, and I'll do my best to make a video going over a similar problem as soon as possible.